What do you prioritize more? People liking you or your life's purpose? If you knew you could have everything you wanted if you just believed, would you take the first step or wait another 10 years? Here on the SDR&R podcast, we tackle everything holding us back.
Come down from your mountain. Oh, I miss your holy shouting. These days I can't make you make a sound. Take me to the times when we look up to the skies and climb up there and draw the thunder down. Now I'm forcing myself into what you've already been through, but darling, I can't help the way I feel. Something stronger, a drug to kill the hunger and ease the awful pain of living here. Well, I'm the kind of love it hurts to look at. Maybe we should take it as a sign. When I'm strung out on leaving, exalting all my demons, you don't care for me enough to cry.
Gosh, such a vulnerable and emotional song. That's Stuck-Moreland with You Don't Care for Me Enough to Cry. Come down from your mountain. Oh, I miss your holy shoutin'. These days I can't make you make a sound. Take me to the times where we'd look up to the skies and climb up there and draw the thunder down. Now I'm forcing myself into what you've already been through. But darling, I can't help the way I feel. And you need something stronger, a drug to kill the hunger and ease the awful pain of living here. Well, I'm the kind of love that hurts to look at. Maybe we should take it as a sign. When I'm strung out on leaving, exalting all my demons, and you don't care for me enough to cry. Heart-wrenching. So this week, we're going to talk a little bit about vulnerability and the importance of vulnerability really being yourself to meet your dreams and, of course, have the success that you're going for. This is largely inspired by Brené Brown's writings. She's, of course, a doctor who has become kind of a pop culture icon because of her studies and her teachings on vulnerability. She said this quote in her new show that I just watched last night, actually. Her new show's on HBO. It's something like Mapping the Language of the Heart, Encyclopedia of the Heart. Anyway, the quote that she said was, "What vulnerable situations are you avoiding that are causing you to miss out on the life you want to live?" And that really struck me as poignant because when someone says vulnerability to me, I think about vulnerability in battle. You are vulnerable, maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, but I think about, legal vulnerabilities, places that you can get hurt. And you can get hurt being vulnerable, but you can also get hurt not being vulnerable, because you just miss out. So when she said that, it really struck me, and I believe it's true. We avoid vulnerable situations and confrontations with people, with ourselves, our soulmates, our partners, with our friends, even our children. And by doing that, we miss out on really living in a lot of ways. And this, of course, taps into the web of all of the different topics that we've covered with this episode. It takes vulnerability to decide what you want, which is what the first episode was that we discussed. It takes vulnerability to not be a zombie and live life with presence, which is the episode on zombie that we did, the cranberries. It takes vulnerability to charge what you're worth. It takes vulnerability to ask for what you need. It takes vulnerability to, for me anyway, criticize someone for if they're doing me harm, because you're revealing the wound a little bit. So what vulnerable situations are we avoiding that causes us to miss out on the life we want to live? How does that work? An easy example of being vulnerable is being the first one to say, I love you. Of course, in that hypothetical situation, if you don't say you love a person, you might miss out on that opportunity. And even though you do love him or her, they will never know it. When I was growing up, I was 16, and my very best friend, Elijah was his name. We lived in a pretty homophobic culture, and it was not okay for men to have feelings, much less tell another man that he loved him. We had been best friends for 7 years. I met him when I was 9, and he was my first friend when we moved to Colorado. And the night before he died, we happened to be having a party with him and our other friend Shane. And we all smoked pot and had a little to drink, and we were all sitting there. It was about, 2 a.m. And I said, I love you. And he said, I love you too. And I'm so grateful that I was able to tell him that before he passed away, because that was really my last chance. Why is being vulnerable so hard? It's hard because you can get hurt. But like anything, you have the highs, it's a high risk, high reward situation. If you are vulnerable with someone else, you're revealing to them a spot that they could harm you. It's a weak spot of yours. It's an uncertain spot. I think Brené Brown defines vulnerability as when you go into a situation not knowing what the outcome will be. And if you're going to live your life, if you're going to be yourself, that means that there's not really going to be a lot of situations where you know what the outcome will be, because no one has ever lived like you. No one has ever lived who is you. You can repeat what other people have done, and you can present a version of yourself to other people that you feel or believe that they want in sort of a people-pleasing type of way. But that won't be you. That'll just be going through the motions like a zombie. What I've found is that being yourself, vulnerable as you are, gives you a lot more strength in a sort of ass-backwards kind of way. But being yourself is easier. We had the episode on, I forget the song that was around it, but dressing like yourself. We had, what are your words? Who are you? When you get up every day, why are you getting up? What's your raison d'être? I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but it's French, right? What's your reason for being? Why are you here? Who are you? All of those questions, the existential crisis. If you're living your life for a reason, if you have a direction, then every time that you show up, you're going to be that much more strong and rooted in your purpose. If you're putting on a mask, though, and living a life that other people would want you to live, not the life that you want to live. If you're being someone else, that's draining. It's hard to act. You can do it, but it's hard. It takes the life force out of you rather than inspiring more from you. Okay, so it's a net negative. But if you're being yourself vulnerably, not knowing what the outcome will be, presenting yourself to other people, not knowing if they will like you or not, if they will reject you or not, that takes courage. You can't have courage without vulnerability. You have to have some fear. You have to have some risk. You have to have some skin in the game, some of your skin in the game. So in entrepreneurship, it was hard for me to start my own company. That took a lot of vulnerability. I had to create this thing out of nothing and put it out there and present it to people, giving them the option to accept the legal services that I was rendering or reject them. And as an entrepreneur, especially when you start, rejection is a daily event. Yes, there are people that accept your services or products, but there's a lot more that reject them. And it doesn't have much to do with you, but it's hard to see that clearly and not believe it. You have to be vulnerable if you're going to create a company. And there's going to be a lot of people, and yourself included at times, that will tell you, I really should be doing something else. I should be working for someone else. Because then if the company fails, if it doesn't make any sales, if it runs out of money, if it goes bankrupt, it's not my fault. And then you have scapegoats. If it's your company, boy, it sure feels like you out there. Luckily, the more you do that, the easier it becomes. So when you're 5 years into a business, it's a hell of a lot easier to ask for a sale than when you first started. I remember when I first started, I spent hours procrastinating the phone call. I was anxious. My heart rate was up. I'm sure my blood pressure was through the roof. I was sweating, and it was in the winter, so, it's cold. But I did it anyway. I put myself out there, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but had I not done that, there's no way that this business could have gotten up. At some point, you have to put yourself out there. So asking for a sale is hard. Hiring people is hard. You're vulnerable for that. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. It's been hard some days when I have to admit to myself that, I haven't made the kind of money or income that I expected to in that given time period. And it sounds simple, but a lot of business owners that have all of the good intentions to be a great entrepreneur and have a really successful business, they can't even admit that they're struggling. And if you can't admit that you have a problem, then there's no way that you can fix that problem. You just don't have the opportunity to fix it. It takes vulnerability to admit where you are in the process, where you are now in comparison to where you want to be. Especially if you have told people, I expect myself to be at this place on this date, and that date was 2 months ago, and I'm still here. That's hard, boy. That's hard. But you have to, because if you don't admit it, the plan you're working out, that you're enacting, your daily grind, is for the wrong things. Entrepreneurship and life itself is all about pivoting and taking an audible and deciding what you need to do differently on the fly. Large mega companies, they don't have the ability to pivot and move and change. They have this force of momentum and inertia, and they just can't stop. But small companies can turn on a dime. A hairpin turn is no problem. You can completely overhaul the company in one day if you really need to. So if the market changes, if life changes, if situations change, you can take advantage of those opportunities that exist with those changes as a product of those changes. But you sure as shit can't do it unless you're vulnerable enough to admit that you're struggling right now. It takes vulnerability to say, I want to live this particular life, or the life that I'm living right now doesn't reward me, doesn't make me happy. I am unhappy. I am unsatisfied with this life. Boy, that's hard, right? So all of these things, if you lay out the success that you want, you talk about your life's purpose, right? Like, what do you have to build? What do you have to say to folks? What dent on the universe do you have to make? What type of person do you want to be with? What type of relationship do you want, or relationships? Right? What type of, do you want kids? What type of home do you want? What legacy do you want to leave? If you lay all of that out, it's vulnerable, just to lay it out. And it's even more vulnerable, I think, to go after that. And then it's even more vulnerable to go after it and recognize from time to time that you're not where you should be. To admit that you have a problem and then change your plans slightly to match the new situation that you didn't expect. Your subconscious is going to make problems for you everywhere because it hates change. And all of your dreams require change because you ain't there right now. And that's fine. You have to be vulnerable to admit that you have issues. You have to be vulnerable to admit that you're unhappy. You have to be vulnerable to admit that you need more, that you want something. Okay, so it ties into everything. It also takes a lot of vulnerability to understand that some of your ideas, some of your creativity is not going to be the greatest. I'm a songwriter, I'm a musician, and some songs that I think are, fucking genius. A lot of people don't like them at all. There's this one song that always makes me tear up. It triggers the shit out of me for some reason. And I've talked it over with therapists and all of that, but other people, it doesn't move them like it moves me, and that's okay. It's okay for me to admit that this song is not the most marketable, and that's okay. You might have a lot of business ideas that aren't going to make it in the marketplace. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. I think we tend to identify with the things that we create. I certainly do. But, you have to vulnerably admit to yourself when something's not working, or if if there's not a market for it at that time. Maybe there will be later. You can't go after something when it's not going to work. I mean, you can, but you're going to waste your time, right? I speak with a lot of entrepreneurs that have these brilliant ideas, but the market's not ready for that idea. It's beyond the time. And it breaks my heart if they spend a bunch of money and time and resources and focus going after something, ignoring the fact that there's not a real market for it. Or maybe it's just impractical. We had a guy that had designed and wanted to get a patent for this special type of hat. And it was a really cool idea. But if he went to Shark Tank, they'd have told him probably what I told him, which was, look, the cost to produce this special type of hat is around 100 times what the market is going to pay for it. And that's just the cost to manufacture it. This is not a workable business idea. It's a great idea. And if it costs, if you can find a way to make it for, 5% of what it now costs to make it, go for it. But if you can't, you have to vulnerably admit to that problem, which can be hard because you might think that this gift is God-given and this is your purpose to go out there and sell this product. If you're like me, most entrepreneurs have lots of different entrepreneurial ideas and creative stuff. It's like at least once a month you've got a new idea for a new business that you could really go after. I think it was Einstein that said, a genius has 10,000 terrible ideas and one good one, every so often, right? So the good ones, the great ones that are worth your time and money and resources to go after and focus, those are, much more rare. Obviously, telling a person, a partner, what you need is so hard. It makes me want to tear up. Speaking with your parents as a child, God forbid, your needs, that's hard. You might get rejected. You might get put down, criticized, But I love how eloquently Brené Brown puts it when she says, what vulnerable situations are you neglecting and thereby missing out on opportunities to live the life you want to live? So what opportunities are you missing out on? Whose life are you living? You got to think about these things. And that's kind of the flip of it, right? If you ask yourself, should I enter into this vulnerable situation or not? Should I enter into the arena or not? You're going to be thinking, no, because what's the benefit? What on earth do I have to gain from making myself vulnerable? I'm not vulnerable if I don't go into that accursed arena, but I certainly am if I do. But if you think about it on your deathbed, if you think about your life as a whole and what you have to lose if you don't give yourself an opportunity to gain, then what do you have? If we're never vulnerable in our whole lives, I would say the extent to which we have the success that we want is absolutely limited by the extent to which we put ourselves in vulnerable situations. This song is so powerful, it's hard for me to listen to it and not get choked up. And so, if I do get choked up, I'm sorry. But the lyrics are, come down from your mountain, oh, I miss your holy shoutin'. These days I can't make you make a sound. Oh my God. I think he's crying for this vulnerability from her, his partner. Take me to the times where we'd look up to the skies and climb up there and draw the thunder down. It is the thunder. The reward that you receive from being yourself, from being vulnerable, being courageous, is astronomical. It's unimaginably powerful. But you have to put it on the line to get that. That's the only way to get it. You have to put yourself on the line. You could also interpret these lyrics as he's singing it to God. Come down from your mountain, oh, I miss your holy shoutin'. These days I can't make you make a sound. Now I'm forcing myself into what you've already been through, but darling, I can't help the way I feel. He understands that the way he feels might be off or unacceptable or something. He might judge it, he might not like it himself, but he can't change the way he feels. That's so powerful. I don't know why it's so powerful to me, but you need something stronger, a drug to kill the hunger and ease the awful pain of living here. I think he's saying, I understand that you hate this life that we have. And she needs something stronger than his love. But the ability to say that, to somebody, that takes a lot of courage. I'm the kind of love that hurts to look at. Maybe we should take it as a sign. When I'm strung out on leaving, exalting all my demons, and you don't care for me enough to cry. When I'm strung out on leaving, that hits me a lot too. Because I think that's the tendency, right? When we don't want to be courageous and vulnerable, we just leave. Psychologists would say there's fusers and there's isolators. Fusers are the type of people that when they're in doubt, when they're struggling with something, they want to fuse with their partners and pull them closer so they get clingy or whatever. And isolators, which I certainly am, will exit the situation and isolate and like self-soothe or whatever. So when he's saying he's strung out on leaving, he's strung out like he can't escape any longer. It's not doing anything for him. So he has to focus on, as much as it hurts, as hard as it is, you know, and God bless him, because that's great. That's how life is. We try to escape. We try our best at, you know, doing what we were told, maybe living a life that someone else told us we should live. But then we just figure out that the only way to really do it is to be yourself. In the road of life, there are passengers and there are drivers. No, but seriously, be yourself. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Realize that the fear is going to be there, and that's just a part of it. And that's your decision, you know. You either get to live a life of safety and predictability that's boring and, to me, akin to death, or you can live a life that is yours, that you were put here to live. But it's going to take some skin in that game. It's going to take some courage to put yourself into situations that you have no idea what the outcome will be. But you still got to try. You still got to try. All right, that's all the time we have for this week. Love you guys. We'll talk soon. Keep rocking. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to hear more, check us out on jonathansparksmusic.com, JONATHAN sparksmusic.com. Please like and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We love you guys. We'll talk soon.